So here we are back at Quiet Space with Lazarus Carpenter. Thank you so much for being our resident author this month. We heard all about your first book in your last interview, and you did a lovely reading for us.
Thank you.
But this time you're going to tell us all about your new book.
Right, well, the new book, which has just been finished, is going to the publishers, hopefully, if not this week, next week. It's called The Prophecy. It's set in the late 1300s, early 1400s, and it follows the life and adventures of a fellow called Crackfinnant. And for the uninitiated in Welsh history, Crackfinnant was a prophet and a seer, and rode at the side of Owain Glyndŵr for a long time. He was a pal of the Bishop of St. Asaph's as well. But fundamentally he was a dwarf and a bit of a psychic and a healer and so on. And some years ago I'd been, as you know, I used to play the Sleeping Giant Festival, and I'd played it for a good few years. And then the year when Lazarus and the Lambs was top of the bill, I thought I'd better write a song. It's been hard getting to the top of this bill. I suppose I'd better write a song about Owain Glyndŵr. So I think that's where it started, actually, because so if you like, the idea for the book started quite a while ago, but I hadn't really got the concept going in my mind at that time. So I'd written Owain Glyndŵr and Jack of Kent, and both being very well received and everything else. And later I'd done this children's play called The Fiery Knight's Tale, which was a bit of a pantomime thing, which I did with Jimmy Juggle, and he did all the sort of circus bits, and I narrated the story, and the kids ran around like lunatics. And we did it at the Gower Heritage Centre through the summer season it was. And I role-played and narrated the character Crackfinnant in that play. So I think that got stuck in my head then. So after Ballad of Penny Graig, I got to thinking, what next? And Crackfinnant came into my head. Nobody really knows anything about him. It's not meant to be a factual story. I suppose it's my Game of Thrones to some extent, or Welsh Game of Thrones, I suppose. But the story starts with Crack finishing his apprenticeship at the grand old age of 25, after being there with his master Clwyd ap Crack and Clwyd from the age of 10. Thought he was going to be there for the rest of his life, you see. But the old boy sent him off to London. He had to go off to Shrewsbury to join a travelling circus as a dumb performing dwarf, because of course he couldn't speak English either. And the first part of the story really tells of his adventures on the way to London, and when he first encounters Glyndŵr, when Glyndŵr was a young man. And then later how they encounter each other again in London, and the adventures start with lots of magic going on, and dragons and prophecies and swords appearing out of the sky, and all these sorts of nice magical things that I can't help being an old retired hippie. But anyway, the story itself started to unfurl really quite well. It's unlike the Ballad of Penny Graig, where I really, really had to think about what I was going to say to make it fit what I knew. I didn't know what the hell I was writing with this, so the whole thing has been made up. I mean, yes, there was a bit of a structure, but not much of one. I really bowled one chapter straight into the next, And I wrote The Prophecy in 6 months. 6 months. I was doing about 1,000 words a day, at one point, much to other people's disgust. But I was on a mission. I was on a mission to get this done, And I had it in mind that I wanted Crack and Glyndŵr to cement their relationship at this particular time, because I know, we know that Glyndŵr was studying law at Lincoln's Inn in 1375, so it was really nice to be able to fit that bit into the story, which meant, of course, that by the time they all went off riding in 1400, Crack was nearly 50, But, old dwarf, see. And Tanny Minard, who's one of the few last remaining Welsh dragons, was sort of flying around teaching people this, that and the other and stuff. And of course, We got Henry stropping him around all over the place, not liking what Glyndŵr's done. You know, I brought in a lot of factual stuff that I've just twisted around to suit the story, to be honest. The story of the prophecy really finishes in around about 1399, just as Glyndŵr is starting to rise, and the Welsh are becoming very disgruntled, and Tanimyned the dragon appears in Glyndŵr's garden to whisk Crack off to a great serious meeting with the great Council of Blue Stone, you know, with all the old magicians and the spirits of the old Welsh warriors, etc. And the first book finishes there. The next one's called The Rise of the Dragon, which really is looking at Crack and Glyndŵr's adventures up to about 1405, thereabouts. Lots of made-up stuff, of course, you know, but and also at the same time, as Glyndŵr is rising, Tanimyned just happens to have found all these dragon eggs. So the what was an almost extinct population of Welsh dragons, there was now 24 babies having to be looked after as well down in the caves of Festiniog. Meantime, of course, Henry's marching into Wales and creating a right mess wherever he goes. And our dear old friend Owain and his brother Tudor and Crack are giving Henry what for. So it's a good story. I mean, it is. It's my. I mean, it's interesting this because I had finished writing the prophecy before I even read Game of Thrones. I only discovered Game of Thrones this year, you know, because I'd heard a lot about it. But you know, you keep away from stuff that everybody seems to like, don't you? Well, I do anyway. Till I've got no choice, and I've got to try it. And of course, as soon as I saw the first episode of Game of Thrones, I was hooked. That was it. Can't wait for the last one. So I watched them all back to back. But what's interesting is that my story, although it's very magical, Lord of the Ringish in some respects, I suppose, it's not really, because it's based on myth and legend. You know, I mean, we know that Glyndŵr existed. We know what Glyndŵr did for Wales, you know, and we know what his brother did. We don't really know what Crack did, because the only person who mentions him is Oilegog. Oilegog mentions him in 2 poems, and other than that, there's no mention of Crack at all in history. So he's in Wikipedia, I think. I found him in Wikipedia. I did find him somewhere that was weird. So the next book after this, so there'll be 3 in the series, and as I say, I'm nearly finished the second one, but the last one will be when, you know, he can't get hold of Glyndŵr, he can't catch him. You know, I've actually written the last chapter of the 3rd book already. I just haven't started.
You know the end.
I know the end, yeah. Well, the end is going.
Tell us.
Oh well, no, I want to really, because the end is really Glyndŵr and Crack sat by a fire in an old cottage in the middle of nowhere, all alone, with a falcon sitting on a you know a perch, reminiscing on their lives. You know, that's the last chapter. That was actually, I wrote that before I even wrote the first book. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me
and talking to us again about your work, and just to say thank you really for your contribution to the arts community.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I mean, thank you for your contributions too.
But it just never seems to end with you, Lazarus.
No, it'll end when I die. No, seriously, I
what
actually.
will we write on your
Well, probably the same as Spike Milligan's. I told you I was ill, you know. I don't know. Maybe. Well, thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Jochen.